Hello, it's the Great Canadian Bagel here, coming to you with the next update to the Canadian Federal Election Prediction Series. We're starting to get to the point where I'm not getting a lot of usable polls. We had 3 polls since the last update, but one of them, the innovative poll, there was nothing wrong with it as far as I could tell, but it did not present the data in the way that I am using this for the model. So this model Whereas some people are making models that are based on federal swings, I'm trying to do it by the provincial swings because I think those are more. I think that'll be more accurate. That is my hunch. With since I have not had a single election to test it against, that is just a hunch in the air. But the innovative poll did not give me any provincial data, so I can't project it to provincial data. So couldn't use it. I likewise am not using this week's ledger poll because I think its results in Saskatchewan, Manitoba are wrong again. Their ledger is predicting a 36% conservative win margin in Saskatchewan, Manitoba combined, and that's not happening. It's not. There's been nothing since last election that would make Saskatchewan, Manitoba go from being like a 50% margin for Scheer to being a 36% margin for O'Toole. There's no reason why it would swing that way. None at all. That's a huge swing. And what has happened? COVID? COVID's not going to cause people to vote like Saskatchewan, Manitoba to have a 14-point swing. That's pretty huge. Like, we even look at like a BC election right now, or the New Brunswick election that's happened since then. Like BC, maybe you could argue that COVID swung at like 10 points in NDP's favor. Maybe. But at the same time, I'm not so certain. I think I don't want to opine on the BC election because I'm not following it too closely. I'm not from British Columbia. But I don't think COVID was a 10-point swing. I think the campaign and all campaign swung things or the polling is wrong. Those are the two things I think is happening. And I don't think it's COVID that has swung it that much. BC election, the Progressive Conservatives in New Brunswick went up like 6 points from 2018. That might be a COVID swing. I could see it. But at the same token, a 6-point swing, not that unreasonable. And if you actually look at it, if you look at both BC and New Brunswick regionally, there's few places where you're seeing double-digit regional shifts. Or there's few hardcore regions that are seeing double-digit shifts. Like in New Brunswick, you didn't see Acadia area have a double-digit shift towards the Progressive Conservatives. In BC, we don't have the election result, but what the polling models are not suggesting that Northern BC or like the BC Liberal Party strongholds are not looking like they're going to have double-digit shifts. And I just don't see how Ledger keeps pulling out results where Manitoba and Saskatchewan are a double-digit shift away from the Conservatives. Like firmly double digits, like 14 points. What has happened? What have they done? Like, sure, they got a new leader, but a new leader shouldn't cause a 14-point shift in the second most conservative province in the region, in the country. And if anything, it's the fact that the Liberals are also gaining support is also suspect, considering a lot of Liberal policies have been actively bad for Saskatchewan since 2019 and Manitoba, such as actively bad or inciting, or what's the word for this? The population that those regions aren't happy with carbon tax, potentially new carbon taxes, the gun ban, blocking pipelines and or railroads. They're threatening to block, Trudeau's threatening to block the Alberta to Alaska Railroad with Bill C-69. So there's no reason to me why these provinces are having a weird result. So, in my editorial decision making, I've rejected this poll again, because I don't understand how Ledger keeps getting this result. I think Ledger's problem is their Manitoba-Saskatchewan panel is really biased, and same with Alberta. I think Ledger gets... Western Canada, I think Ledger has a really biased sample. Because BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba are consistently being pulled lower than everybody else, every other pollster. For the Conservatives are getting pulled significantly lower than everyone else in the West, and the Liberals are getting consistently pulled higher for Ledger. I'm not saying Ledger's doing that on purpose. I think they're doing everything in their power to prevent that. But since Ledger's using an online panel, I think they have a biased panel. That's completely out of their control, and I don't think it's Ledger's fault. But I think the panel is biased. Now, that doesn't mean I always reject the Ledger results. I don't reject their results when it makes sense with other polling and with things, and have a reasonable movement. If we're talking like a 6-point shift from the Conservatives in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, that's a reasonable result in my mind. So there is editorial decision making on this part, and that's my choice of the model. I'm trying to predict an election, so I'm making editorial decisions. I don't think all data is equal, and I think it's impossible to make a model, or at least not. It's very difficult to make a model that can handle the occasionally bad data collected, and you need human intuition on it. That's my opinion. If you disagree, feel free to comment below how you think I should be handling it other than human intuition. If you think my intuition is wrong, also feel free to comment to me. If you're from Saskatchewan or Manitoba or British Columbia or Alberta, and you can point out to something to me that has caused you to lose faith in the Conservative Party and decide to vote Liberal, not a third party, but Liberal, feel free to comment to me in the comment section below and tell me why. Help me understand it, and I can make the poll. I cannot help my intuition on these things, but otherwise, that is my decision making. And really, if we're looking at this results here, we had the Conservatives gain a seat in Nova Scotia at the expense of the Liberals, and PEI is a little less safe. Great. That's literally the only change. I mean, you'll see when I go over the data, the raw data in a second, but we're not seeing much. There's not a lot of movement. And I think that's to be expected. We're far away from a campaign season. People aren't really getting pulled, and they have bigger things on their mind. People are more concerned about COVID. They're more concerned about the economy and having money, being able to afford to eat, than they are about politics. And I think we should understand that. I think that's why you see a lot of these parties getting pulled quite high, like Quebec. I don't think Coalition Avenir Québécois is going to get 49% or 50% of the vote in the Quebec election. But what I think is happening in those polls is Quebecers are sitting there and being like, yeah, I think they're doing a good enough job right now. Essentially, it's like either consciously or subconsciously, they're basically saying, we don't want an election. Now, what you see in BC is that you can turn that subconscious we don't want a change in government to what looks like actual electoral support. That said, in recent memory, in 2013, the BC polls were off by like 7 percentage points, way outside the margin of error. They were polling it was like 10 percentage points. They were polling BC NDP at +6, and they ended up losing by -4. And the Liberals, BC Liberals, I believe, got an actual majority government. So it happens. The polling can be wrong. And maybe the polling's wrong in BC. Maybe it's not. We'll find out, I believe, in 10 days. But otherwise, really not too much movement here. So I will flip over to the raw data. So here we get some raw data. We have now 4 weeks of data in this model, and there's the only notable movement. So like, we'll start with this first actually. So there seems to be a growing movement in other vote. Interesting. I don't really know why, but it's pretty small, so it could just be blown out by polling. Who knows? And rounding. Polling and rounding, I should note, because there is rounding in a lot of places in this model, so the rounding can blow out some stuff. When it's this small a value, when you're talking about 0.5% of the vote, well, then again, many times in the past, we've had elections where the other vote was like 1 to 2%, so again, that's not unreasonable. PPC, pretty much constant. Maybe a slight increase, but we would need many, many weeks of this before that trend is significant. Currently, I would say, just eyeballing this, they started at 1.086 and now they're at 1.087, and between that they went down and went up. Probably no movement. Same thing with the block, they seem to be bouncing back and forth around 7. Probably no movement. The Liberals, maybe a slight upward trend, but pretty small. You see, they started about 36.2 here, now they're at 36.5. I think they're probably going to plateau around 36.5, barring any major pro or anti Trudeau moves. But I think it's probably going to stay there. Hovering, obviously, it's going to bounce a bit because polling can never stay at a certain level. Actually, you should look at a poll suspect if every single week it's supporting the same result for a party. That's probably fixed, because that's just not how you get an actual random sample size. People's opinions change over week to week, and if you're taking a different group of people, you should expect that to be the sampling to be differently. So it's probably going to bounce a bit, but I think it's probably going to average around 36.5, maybe 37, but I doubt it's going to move too much. It's definitely not going to move into majority territory. The Conservatives also look like they gained a little. They went up a little bit, but it's pretty insignificant, so they could just be hovering around 34-ish, 34.2-ish maybe, 34.25 perhaps. It's really, the movement is so small with this many data points that we could never say if there's a trend or not. Could just be noise. Now, the one thing that is happening, and I think this isn't noise because of the significance on the margin, is the Green Party since last week. I don't think this is noise. Now, the reason why I don't think this is noise is not because of the number change. They went from about 4.57 to 4.83-ish. That's not significant enough that it's outright movement. What that is, though, is in combination with events that have happened in the last week, may be enough to actually say something, especially combined with the NDP, who went from 16.17 to 15.81, which is about 0.4, and the Green went up by about 0.25. I think that is correlated. And the reason why I think that's correlated is Singh recently voted with Trudeau to close down the We Committee, among other things. And I think that made him lose support from the NDP voters, the left-wing NDP voters, probably the more environmentally concerned left-wing NDP voters who are anti-Trudeau. They see Trudeau as either, I'm not trying to endorse or say espouse these as my values or say they're correct or wrong. I'm just saying why they might dislike Trudeau. Personally, I dislike Trudeau, but trying not to just cover my bases here. They might think Trudeau's corrupt, or that he's not liberal enough, or that he's doesn't care about the environment enough, or he's too friendly to oil and gas, or he doesn't care about labor, or he's too globalist. These are all possible things. I'd be very surprised, mind you, if there's a Green voter, or sorry, an NDP voter who thinks the Liberals are too globalist and then votes Green. But maybe. It's conceivable. So, also possible is that they think the Liberals are not very good at spending the money because the Green Party is generally more fiscally conservative in a way. It's kind of weird to say it, but like the Green Party is more fiscally conservative because they believe in a balanced budget. They just, unlike the Conservatives or the PPC, they're fiscally conservative in that they would raise taxes to cover budget deficit, whereas the Liberals don't seem to care. The NDP doesn't seem to care. And the Conservatives in the PPC would try to restrict spending. PPC cut spending, Conservatives reduce growth and spending. That's broad overviews, mind you. It's more complicated than that, but that's not the point of this video. So, what I think you all should keep an eye out for, those who are watching this video, who are interested in this kind of thing, is the next coming months, I would say. Does this trend keep happening? Are the NDP going to be bleeding support again to the Greens? Now, I think this is going to happen. I think that is a trend we will see, not because the new Green leader, Nanami Paul, I believe is her name. Again, I don't really know how to pronounce it, but that's my best shot at it. Not that I think she's necessarily going to be doing a good or bad job. She's getting the unfortunate same treatment that Erin O'Toole did, in that the Green leadership race and herself is getting almost no media coverage in favor of Canadian media covering the US election, because obviously us Canadians care more about US political parties and political candidates than our own political parties and candidates, especially our own ones who have seats in Parliament and actually have a direct impact on policy making. But I guess no one cares about them. So, neither to demean or to endorse her, or to support her in this regard, I don't think she's doing anything that's causing the votes to go in her favor, other than maybe just her name and face, or people know her background. But her campaigning-wise or supporting-wise, I don't think it's caused any change, especially in a week. Maybe in a month or two we might see movement because of her specifically, but since the media is doing such a bad job covering her, and any of her policies and her new decision-making, or the whole Green leadership race, I don't think it's anything from her particularly right now. What I think it is I think it's NDP voters parking their votes with Green, and I think we will see this going forward next month or two, because Singh is not doing his job. The job of the NDP has been, and always will be, to get a minority government, negotiate for NDP policies, whatever those be, oftentimes left-wing, pro-big government, union kind of policies. Those are the broad conception. And the other aspect of that is to hold the other parties to a higher moral standard. That's what Jack Layton did. That's why he was so successful, because he attacked the Liberals, he attacked the Conservatives for their failings, and as whether you like or dislike the NDP, having a party, even a minor party, that has essentially no hope of forming a government, barring a very charismatic leader combined with a really uncharismatic Liberal leader, as we saw in 2011, the NDP is best served helping all Canadians, or at least in their view helping Canadians, by holding everyone to a higher standard. And Singh is failing that. He's getting his policies passed, maybe. It's really hard to say that Trudeau would have not passed some of these things anyways, or whether these commitments on Trudeau's part are even actionable. Like, I believe one of them was paid sick leave. That's not a federal concern. I don't really know how he's going to get a bunch of conservative premiers to do that, because we have BC and Newfoundland. BC's NDP premier, obviously, which probably would be fine with doing paid sick leave. Newfoundland and Nova Scotia are liberal, have their provincial liberal premiers, but as a Nova Scotian, Stephen McNeil's fairly fiscally conservative, so I doubt he would do something like throw paid sick leave into the fire right now. And I can't really speak about Dwight Ball. I think that's the name of the Newfoundland premier. I can't really speak for him. But Newfoundland doesn't really have the budget for it. They're almost bankrupt. So I doubt they want to throw a bunch of money at paid sick leave, because it probably is going to cost money to get it done. So we'll see. But I think Singh is in a dangerous circumstance. He's pushing a bunch of policies that are very hard to actually get done, while tying himself closer and closer to the Liberals. There was a press statement I saw where Singh was saying that he might support the Liberals to 2023. And I think if he does that, if the NDP is the reason the Liberals stay in power till 2023, no other reason, just the NDP, I think the NDP gets almost wiped out. And we're starting to see this, I think, on the provincial level. The last New Brunswick election, the NDP went from having like 12% of the vote but no seats to like 1% of the vote and still no seats. So I think they have to be careful. I think the Green Party is in a very strong position to completely usurp the NDP in PEI, PEI, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. Possibly Quebec, not that either of them would make any significant ground in Quebec, because Bloc and Liberals suck up most of the oxygen. And it's a very dangerous position for them. The party doesn't have a lot of money, they're not doing very good at fundraising, and to make all of this worse, Aaron O'Toole, well, it's hard to say if he's being successful at this or not, is positioning himself to snipe the unionized manufacturing segment of the NDP. Completely eclipse it, suck at it. The working class manufacturing workers who normally vote, not normally, who a large chunk of them will vote NDP on union line, might defect to the Conservatives under Aaron O'Toole push to them. And that wouldn't be surprising, because we've seen that in Britain, we've seen that in the US, two very similar countries. So we might see that. So this thing's in a very tough, difficult position. He's getting attacked on three flanks. And he's not doing a good job distinguishing himself, because right now the NDP is acting like a liberal, like the leftist, the more left-wing wing of the Liberal Party. And if you're getting the more left-wing wing of the Liberal Party as an NDP voter, why wouldn't you just vote for join like the Liberal Party if you're like a very active political member? Why wouldn't you just join the Liberals and vote for a more left-wing Liberal candidate in your riding? And donate to the more left-wing Liberal candidates in your riding. Because, in general, it's better to have a full majority than this faux majority we currently have. But, that is, I'll call that for my analysis today. I guess the broad overviews of this is not much movement. There might be some movement between the Green and NDP. We'll have to take a couple weeks to see it. I am expecting it to happen, but what I expect to happen, based on my intuition and based on what I've been seeing, is not guaranteed to happen. Otherwise, if you liked the video, please like, share, subscribe, comment below. all of these things help grow the channel, and I'm really trying to move in and get some more political commentary and political commentary and discussion in Canadian politics, because Canadian politics, by the regular mainstream media, is terribly done. People just don't know what's going on. They're very poorly informed by the media. Not really the people's fault. The media would rather talk about the US election than 2 leadership races that just happened, and 2 major parties who hold seats in Parliament. But that's the reality of the situation. So if you agree with me on these matters, and you think I have good takes, or my understanding of these things is well done, please share it. It really helps grow the channel, and I greatly appreciate it, any and all support you give me. Otherwise, have a good day.